From partisan fights to in-party brawls, a special look at the state of American politics. Good evening and thanks for joining us for this special Faith Nation. In Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. The Republican Party has radically changed. Once the party of Ronald Reagan, the GOP is now far from the Gipper's conservative ideals. CBN's David Brody takes a closer look at the party's march from Reaganism to populism.
The GOP is no longer considered the party of Reagan.
Today, a populist movement is rising in the Republican Party.
Former VP Mike Pence prefers a return to those days of Reagan conservatism and opposes Trump's version of today's GOP.
In the days to come, will we be the party of conservatism? Or will we follow the siren song of populism unmoored to conservative principles? The future of this movement and this party belongs to one or the other, not both.
Make no mistake, Donald Trump has changed the Republican Party, something retiring Senator Mitt Romney regrets.
Well, there's no question but that the Republican Party today is in the shadow of Donald Trump. He is the leader of the greatest portion of the Republican Party. It's a populist, I believe, demagogue portion of the party. Look, I represent a small wing of the party, if you will. I call it the wise wing of the Republican Party. And I don't believe we're going away. I think ultimately we'll see a resurgence and come back into leadership of the party.
That doesn't seem likely, because while Trump gets the credit, this version of the GOP has been developing over decades, and the statistics bear that out. Coming out of Reagan and into the Bush years, 62% of Republicans preferred to reduce the debt rather than protect entitlements. Now, only 29% feel that way. And back then, 53% felt America should be more active abroad. But after attempts at nation building and the post-9/11 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Republicans became fed up. And that number is much lower today at 24%. Steve Toth is a state senator from Texas.
It's been aided by 24/7 news coverage that has brought a lot of coverage to the industrial war complex that exists in Washington, D.C. in the Uniparty. And I think people are just sick and tired of it.
And the culture wars are far worse today than at any time in modern American history.
Ronald Reagan did not have to deal with critical race theory. Ronald Reagan didn't have to deal with the covert transitioning of our children in our public schools from male to female or female to male. Ronald Reagan didn't have to deal with abortion through not 9 months, but 10 months. And so there is an outrage in the United States that has called for a new kind of politician, a new kind of office holder that is not going to talk a good talk, but is actually going to have to deliver some results.
Enter Donald Trump marching toward a more blue-collar populist party that's also operating in a very different political environment. The days of working across the aisle are almost non-existent. Long gone are the days when Reagan and then Democrat House Speaker Tip O'Neill shared a cozy personal relationship.
One day I picked up the paper and read where he had made a statement about me that was pretty harsh. And I called him and I said, Tip, I thought we had a relationship here where we could do business together and all, and now I read in the paper that you said. And he interrupted me and said, well, old buddy, that's just politics. He said, after 6 o'clock, we're buddies, we're friends.
Along with the cordial relationships disappearing and trust in the federal government eroding, pessimism seems to rule the day now. While Reagan focused on the shining city on a hill, today 40% of Americans feel Republican leaders are mostly pessimistic when they talk about the country's future. To be clear, Reagan and Trump have two similar core underpinnings: champion traditional family policies with the mantra of less government.
I believe Ronald Reagan would have attacked these issues the same way that Donald Trump has. It would have been a little bit more nuanced, would have been a little friendlier, right? But he would have attacked it nonetheless the exact same way.
So what are we to make of the GOP's future? Will it be a full-on embrace of populism or something else?
I think when you look at these candidates, you see them all recognize the fact that the future of the right, the future of the Republican Party, is going to be some uneasy, sometimes complementary synthesis of Reagan conservatism and Trump populism.
And what that ends up as is anyone's guess. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
A pro-choice pastor making waves on Capitol Hill. We sit down with Senator Raphael Warnock right after this. Welcome back. 5 current members of Congress are ordained ministers, 3 in the House and 2 in the Senate. Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock is one of them. He goes back to Atlanta every Sunday to preach at his historic church. Matt Galka traveled to Georgia to talk to the pastor and senator about his faith and how it influences his politics.
It's Easter Sunday at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. These same pews bore witness to sermons by Martin Luther King Jr. as he led the civil rights movement.
Still to fight on.
The church is close to politics once again, as the senior pastor of Ebenezer is also Georgia's junior senator.
We will certainly be united with him in a resurrection like his.
From the pulpit to the plow fields of rural Georgia, Raphael Warnock is attempting to balance his first full term in the Senate.
Someone might ask, why would a preacher get involved in something as messy as politics? I'm a patriot. I love America. Only in America is my story possible. You're looking at a kid who grew up in public housing. I serve in the United States Senate.
Warnock is battle-tested. His re-election victory over opponent Herschel Walker needed a special runoff election to decide the outcome. It was the second time Warnock won under the circumstances in the past 2 election cycles. He won a special election in 2020 to become Georgia's first black senator and the first Democrat elected to represent the state in the Senate in 20 years. While the political victories raised his profile, government wasn't always part of the plan.
I'm a Matthew 25 Christian. Inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. When you feed the hungry, when you clothe those who are naked, when you visit those who are sick and in prison. And so that's the work that I've tried to do as a pastor. And what I found out is that over time, my ministry at Ebenezer Baptist Church took me into the public square.
Warnock says his faith drives him when advocating for things like racial justice, reducing gun violence.
As a pastor, I'm praying for those who are affected by this tragedy, but I hasten to say that thoughts and prayers are not enough.
And expanding health care. He helped get the price of insulin capped at $35 for Medicare recipients as part of the Inflation Reduction Act passed last year. He's now trying to extend that to people with private insurance. Warnock and Oklahoma Republican Senator James Langford are the Senate's only 2 ordained ministers. While scriptures they both read are from the same book, the partisan divides remain on a variety of topics, none more evident than the issue of abortion. Langford is outspokenly pro-life, while Warnock labels himself as a pro-choice pastor. You have not been shy about saying you're a pro-choice pastor. You know, to some Christians out there at least, they're probably sitting at home and saying, well, this guy's not a real Christian then.
I mean, my faith is so basic to who I am. I don't feel a need to defend my Christian identity. I'm a man of faith. I love the Lord with all my heart, my soul, my mind, and my strength. And Christians have a whole range of differences on a whole range of issues. And for me, the acid test of your faith is the depth of your commitment to the most marginalized members of the human family.
Do you find it hard as a pastor to find a biblical defense for being pro-choice?
Oh, my stance as a pro-choice pastor is not in spite of my Christian identity, it's because of my Christian identity. I believe in human agency and I believe in choice. I have a deep reverence for life, profound reverence for life. And I have a respect for choice.
To Warnock, having the freedom to choose also means the government should be supporting women and families faced with difficult decisions on unplanned pregnancies. He sponsored a bill with Senator Marco Rubio aimed at improving maternal mortality rates. He's advocated for expanding the child tax credit that aids low-income families.
Senator Rubio and I don't agree on the reproductive choice question. But if the issue is life, what we both recognize is that this country's maternal mortality rate is criminally high. And it's something we can actually do something about.
If a member of your congregation came up to you and said, well, Pastor, Senator, I like you a lot. I like what you have to say. But Psalm 139:16, I knew you before you were born. I just can't get with you on that pro-choice, pro-life debate.
The question is, whose choice is it? And I still believe that a patient's room is too small and cramped a space for a woman, her doctor, and the United States government. And I think as we're seeing this debate play out right now, there is diversity on that point, even inside of the evangelical Christian community.
Warnock has proven so far his brand of sermons and service can win in a new political battleground in Georgia. It's not too early for pundits to toss his name around when talking about future presidential candidates, but it is too early for him to consider it right now. So a pastor is in the Senate. Could a pastor be in the White House?
I think so. Look, we need all kinds of people serving in all kinds of places. But right now, I'm focused on serving the people of Georgia, and I still, every few days, pinch myself. I can't believe I get to do this work. And I'm looking forward to serving the people of Georgia for a long time.
In Atlanta, Georgia, Matt Galka, CBN News.
From the pulpit to the television, we'll talk with a news anchor turned congressman right after this. When Republicans gained control of the House at the start of this year, more than 70 fresh faces took residence on Capitol Hill. Some new members are trying to make waves and get wins for their home districts. But as Matt Galka reports, once again, one congressman is putting his call to serve ahead of political ambitions.
Representative-elect Mark Alford didn't think he'd be here just about a year ago. He figured he'd still be behind a news desk, a place he's spent the last 20 years. But now he believes that all of that time spent in front of the camera was just God preparing him for his moment in Congress. It can be hard finding your way around the Capitol when you're the new guy.
Everyone who's been here a while or been in politics, government says it's like drinking out of not just a fire hose, but a fire hydrant. Forget the hose. There's so much information coming at you.
We met up with Representative-elect Mark Alford shortly after he won his Missouri midterm.
It's just overwhelming. I get here, like the first day we get on the House floor. I mean, I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be on the House floor, and come January 3rd, I will be there, and that will be my job.
Alford's background is in television news. After reporting and anchoring in Kansas City for more than 2 decades, he felt like his voice wasn't being heard clear enough.
I don't consider them conservative views. It was the facts. It was the other side of the story. It was what was missing a lot of times to give the story balance.
That's when he started to reflect about his next move, and it started with prayer.
And so it was a very scary leap. I've never done anything like that in my life, just to go out. But I felt God pushing me out this window, and he was saying, fly, trust me, fly. And I did it. We took that leap. I turned in my 2 weeks resignation. I went on the last day of our air, and I told the viewers, everything that I've done up to this point was to tell you the truth, because that's the only thing that matters is truth. And those were my last words, and then I filed for this office, announced our candidacy.
He takes over for Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler. After getting some tips from her at the Capitol, he'll turn his focus towards issues in his district, including hardships being felt by rural Missourians.
We need to make sure that our farmers are protected. And so with the Farm Bill coming up in 2023, I'm hoping to get on the Ag Committee to help push through a farm bill that's going to be beneficial for the American people as far as the food programs go, which makes up 80% of it, but also equally important for our farmers that need protection, that need crop insurance, that need Americans to get behind them and say, we believe in you.
While Alford might not know his way inside the Beltway quite yet, he's confident in his guide.
President Reagan said some 40 years ago something to this effect: it's time for us to reassert our trust in God. It's time to realize that we need him more than he needs us, and it's time to turn to God for the healing of America. I want to be part of that healing. I don't know what kind of role I'll be able to play. I'm just be one voice, but I want to do all I can to make that happen.
Alford says he'd like to produce a weekly news-style program for his constituents from Capitol Hill. He'll be part of the 118th Congress that'll be officially sworn in on January 3rd. Matt Gelka, CBN News.
The cornerstone of American politics. Up next, we sit down with Fox News' Brett Baer to talk about the U.S. Constitution. Finally tonight, as Americans, we can sometimes forget the enormous price paid by the Founding Fathers in their fight to break away from Great Britain. They risked everything to create a new nation with a constitution that has stood the test of time. Author and Fox News anchor Brett Baer says current leaders could learn something from those brave men, especially First President George Washington. Wendy Griffith sat down with Baer to talk about his new book, To Rescue the Constitution, George Washington and the Fragile American Experiment.
As an author, Fox News anchor Brett Baer seeks to bring historical figures like Patrick Henry and Paul Revere to life. This time around, in To Rescue the Constitution, he focuses on George Washington, who, according to Baer, is the only one who could have convinced a ragtag army to fight the British and believe they could win.
He had this ability to fire them up, and he had an ability in imposing this belief that liberty was worth fighting for. These guys, some of them didn't have shoes. They had bloody feet in the middle of Valley Forge in the winter, and yet they overtook the British forces.
What was it about George Washington, about his character, his person, that was so unique that, you know, was the glue that held everything together?
They had come up with the Articles of Confederation that loosely knit the colonies together, but it wasn't working. And George Washington was this stoic figure who was well respected, and in his silence, he found common ground with the different disparate groups to be able to link everybody together for the good of the country.
As a man of faith, Washington also believed God was on his side.
You look at the miracle of bringing together all of these people and ratifying this document around a very tense time, that had to be a divine intervention of some kind. And Washington talked about that.
And the fact that he even survived, because he wasn't just commander-in-chief from afar. I mean, he was on the front lines with his men, and he never got injured.
Yeah, and that also is pretty divine intervention, you would think. You know, it's a lesson for our times that you don't have to be the best. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to hustle and have faith and believe that you can do it.
And that belief helped Washington and his army to defeat the British. But even with a Declaration of Independence, the newly formed United States of America appeared anything but united or independent.
Looking back at history, that time right after the war was really dangerous. It was really divided. It was really split. And people were wondering whether the U.S., which was not even the United States at that point, was going to go back to British rule, because that would be the alternative.
Despite all this, Baer says George Washington held the country together, and in 1787 came the drafting and signing of the U.S. Constitution.
It's a unique document in the world, and there are a lot of people who say it needs to be adjusted and doesn't work right, but if you look really closely, it's held the test of time, and it has been a living and breathing document that enabled our country to operate in liberty.
What can our leaders in Washington, and really what can all of us learn from George Washington?
Dissent is okay. Don't be afraid of what feels like a very partisan time of different opinions, but listen first to the other side. Take what they're saying and listen and try to find some common ground. Washington did that better than anyone, but he also realized that in order for the country to move forward, you have to get something, and you can't be at each other nonstop. We're at a very divided time, but we've been very divided before. from the beginning of our nation, we almost didn't form. At the Civil War, we almost fell apart. I think George Washington would say, we can find a way. The American people have it in their heart.
Some people think we're on the verge of another civil war now.
Well, it's tense, and social media has stirred things up even further. Everybody's putting out their feelings in maybe not the best terms and fires other sides up, and going back and forth. But I think the lesson of Washington and of big leaders throughout our country is that we as a country are bigger than that tension.
And your book is called To Rescue the Constitution, and you believe that George Washington was the rescuer?
He was the rescuer. He's the reason that we have a Constitution. He is the one that essentially got it across the finish line. And without George Washington, we wouldn't have a country.
In writing this series of history books, Bear says he's really focusing on the younger generation in hopes they will learn of the sacrifice and leadership that birthed and brought this country to be.
Because I think it's important for us to remember where we've been so that, you know, we can see where we're going to go. But more importantly for the next generation, because I think history has been taken out of schools. And a lot of times our kids don't know where we've been as a country. So why not start at the beginning and tell them how we were formed? And hopefully that inspires the next George Washington or the next leader to be.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Washington.
And that's going to do it for Faith Nation this evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great night.